Joining us now are Robert Fife, Ottawa Bureau Chief for the Globe and Mail, and Tonda MacCharles, the Ottawa Bureau Chief for the Toronto Star. Hello to both of you.
Hey there.
Thank you for having us.
I'm always happy to have you on the program. Listen, we're looking at what, like a pause on taxing home oil heating in Atlantic Canada, a program to buy heat pumps for lower income Canadians, as well as the doubling of rebate for rural Canadians. Is this about finally queuing into affordability issues for the Trudeau government, or as Pierre Poilievre basically says, this is all about their falling numbers in the polls?
I think two things can be true at once. The Liberals are spinning it as they're attuned to the affordability issue, the cost of living burden that some of the home heating costs are putting on people, especially given the carbon levy. But there's no question in anybody's mind that this is because in large measure that Liberal caucus has had huge losses in support in Atlantic Canada, right, where this tax is, where the carbon tax was really hitting hard. And to the Conservatives' credit, you know, they've been hammering it. I mean, I think Pierre Poilievre was in Newfoundland alone 3 or 4 times in the last several months. So just hammering it and finding a willing and winning audience there.
Yeah, hammering it, as you say, because every single day there's a news conference about axing a tax. Bob, what do you say?
Oh, look, I think the government is in panic mode. They are willing to take one of their most important priorities on the carbon tax, particularly with home heating, which is a real polluter, a contributor to greenhouse gas emissions, and throw it in the garbage can, because they are so worried about those seats in Atlantic Canada. And to Tonda's point is that Mr. Poilievre has been in Atlantic Canada and he's been campaigning. Thursday night, after the announcement was done, he had over 1,000 people in Windsor, Nova Scotia, 1,000 people. And he was hammering away at them, saying, you know, okay, they say they're going to not impose the carbon tax on home heating oil, but that's only for 3 years, right after the election campaign. We'll get rid of this carbon tax. So, it was an effective message, and the government is in real trouble here. And the problem they have is that, frankly, and I know we'll probably talk about this, but you know, it's one thing for Atlantic Canada seats. Well, what about the rest of the country? What about in Western Canada, where most people do not they have natural gas and not home heating oil? It doesn't apply to them. So it's a very divisive policy as well. Yeah,
we will get to that in a second. But you know, you're talking about the Liberals, MPs, individual MPs, seeing them being hit hard in the region. And without a doubt, here's a Liberal government that relies on the Atlantic Canadian vote, that relies on the vote in Ontario and in the vote in Quebec as well to keep them afloat. But you know, we were covering the Liberal caucus in London before the return of Parliament in September, and behind closed doors, we know that the MPs were giving the Prime Minister a hard time, saying that they're getting killed on the issue of the carbon tax back home. Why did it take so long to respond to that call, given that meeting was before the return of Parliament?
Yeah, so that meeting was in September, but I think, look, it's been even longer than that, right? Almost right away this summer, the Atlantic premiers were putting up complaints and objections to Trudeau about the impact of this. And I mean, I would just say a couple of things. Like, first of all, you can't say they're throwing the whole thing in the garbage. They've put a pause on it. They're going to bring it in 3 years. But I don't know that that actually electorally is a better pitch for any of those MPs, because you're closer to an election at that point, and now people actually do know the real pain of it. They've had months of living with higher oil costs and, by the way, higher gas and diesel costs as well. And that also hits rural Canadians, and it also hits, you know, people who use boats to do their daily work and use trucks and whatever. So I don't know that it's necessarily I guess, an electoral win for them yet. The closer you are to a campaign, Pierre Poilievre is going to be able to use that as a sledgehammer anyway against this government.
Well, also, I mean, if they're going to have, they're going to allow people in Atlantic Canada to be able to have these home heating devices. Well, wait a second.
Heating pumps.
You know, I mean, what about the rest of the country?
Well, the supply of heating, you know, most of, I guess a third they say, but I know certainly in Newfoundland and Labrador, most people do still heat their homes with oil. A third in the Atlantic provinces use heating oil. They don't have the option of natural gas heating supplies in many places. So to say that what about the rest? I mean, I think that the government is still making the case. I agree it's going to be a politically challenging thing to do, to make that case, but they are still making the case that the idea is to bring down usage of all of these fossil fuels. It's just, there's a lack of coherence policy-wise. It signals that the government's ready to bend on its signature policy, and there's a lack of coherence politically, to Bob's point. Other regions will feel left out and hard done by.
Well, let me jump in here, because we did hear from Danielle Smith, the Alberta Premier, taking to social media, Twitter, X, I don't really know what to call it these days. Take a look at what she had to say on social media. Although I congratulate Atlantic Canadians for a well-deserved break from the carbon tax on home heating oil, I am frankly disturbed that the same break will not be extended to Albertans and those from Saskatchewan and elsewhere in Canada who heat their homes with natural gas. And she asked the question, are we not Canadians too? So, to your point, Bob, there are many people looking at what's happening with Atlantic Canada, wondering about their own bills at home. Will the Liberal government be forced to also address that and make concessions to this campaign that Danielle Smith is spending $8 million on right now to try to get Liberals to listen to?
Look, it is a very serious issue because, you do have to treat everybody the same in this country. And if people in Western Canada or in Northern Ontario, for example, where if they can't get heat pumps, because most people in Northern Ontario don't have access to natural gas, it's usually home heating oil. If they're not being treated the same way as an electorally important province for the Liberals as Atlantic Canada, people are going to say, oh, wait, what is next? The GDA will get a break here, and the southern part of British Columbia, but the hell with the Western Canada. This is a national unity issue that can play effectively by the premiers in Western Canada as well. So, the Liberals have put themselves in a real bind here. They're trying to deal with a really serious affordability issue, but for electoral reasons. Just like they did on the housing when they reduced the GST, because Mr. Poilievre was making political hay out of that. But I think this is one that's going to cause them a lot more trouble, because it's mostly exclusively for Atlantic Canadians, and everybody else is going to say across the country, well, what about me?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. What do you say there, Tonda?
Well, I still think that it is an argument absolutely to be expected from the Conservative premiers out west to make. Absolutely, they're going to make that argument, and I think that it is going to be challenging for the government to make the case that's not what they're doing because of the incoherence on the policy. Bottom line here, the government is saying on the one hand that they're still behind pricing carbon no matter what, and yet on the other hand, we see the only kind of carbon right now that they're willing to cut a break on is home heating oil in Atlantic Canada, and not the natural gas heating source for other areas. So yeah, huge challenge politically for them, and it does signal that they're worried.
Okay, well, that leads me to the big question then, because if this is in response to obviously a free fall in the numbers for the Liberals, does this decision have the potential to turn things around for them in Atlantic Canada and the rest of the country? Because on the one hand, and we're all making it here, they're making a concession on affordability, but at the same time they're watering down their own environmental policy, and flip-flopping never looks good on any leader. Do you think the Liberals will gain from this?
Look, it's a tough argument to make, but they will make the argument that this shows a government listening to its own MPs and listening to the concerns of real people. It is a tough argument to make when you see all the inconsistencies we've pointed out here. But will it turn it around? I think it's far too soon. We're at least, I'd say, a year out maybe, or 8 months from an election, and at most 2 years out. So who knows what's going to turn it around? Look, there are many fires for this government right now, and I don't know that I'd be putting any money on anything turning it around right now.
Yeah, Bob?
Well, look, I don't think it's going to be turned around for the Liberals until Justin Trudeau leaves, because the problem he has is he's been around here for a long time. And there has been no government since Mackenzie King that has gone past 10 years, and he's heading into his 9th year. So it's going to be extremely difficult for him to be able to, win another government when you're still confronted with all of these issues on affordability, which is not going to go away anytime soon. And although these things help a little, they're not going to help all that much. And what happens, in a year's time, when people are waiting to get their rebates on their home heating pump, and they can't get it. That'll, how government is.
What will help the government recover, the lag in the polls right now, is if inflation comes down, people can meet their bills, and if the Bank of Canada sees fit to drop interest rates so people can pay their mortgages without the pain they're feeling now. Those big macroeconomic things will help this government. Small policy changes may not be, the thing that rescues them.
Yeah, although to hear it from the Bank of Canada governor, we're looking not until 2025 before the rates go down. And, I'm going to squeeze in one more question here because I want to pick up on what you're saying here. Is Justin Trudeau at the point where people are so tired of him that no matter what he does, he's not going to turn the numbers around? I don't know if you've considered that.
That's personally, I think that's my position, is that I think it's very difficult. I think people over the summer made up their mind that they've had it with him. Doesn't mean that they've had it with the Liberal Party. Maybe if you put somebody, it's a matter of timing and length of time that you have a leader, and it's very difficult for somebody to go beyond that 10-year period in federal politics or even provincial politics for that matter. But doesn't mean that if there's a new leader that they couldn't present themselves as a fresh face that could defeat Mr. Poilievre. So, politics is the art of the possibility, right?
Okay. Any words on that one?
No, I would just say that the Conservatives and the NDP are absolutely banking on the fact that Justin Trudeau is not the sellable commodity he was in 2015 in the next campaign. And I don't have a crystal ball, so I don't know.
Yeah, well, we were at the NDP convention, and that was clearly the signal as well. They're not worried about Justin Trudeau. They're much more focused on Pierre Poilievre and the Conservatives. But, of course, a discussion for another day. But for now, Bob and Tonda, thank you for the time.
Thanks.